What is going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Superman and Lois review. This time, of course, we're going to be talking about episode number 9. Things are really picking up here as we get not like one, not even two, but 3 really big plot twists, I think, in this episode, along with just like a really interesting plot of kind of how Kryptonite is affecting Jordan a lot differently than it affects Superman. But there's a lot to really break down in this episode, so guys, let's get right into it, starting with our first moment, which is I do gotta admit, this was kind of a weird question that Lois ended up asking herself, and I feel like they only really had this question in mind only because they really wanted to build up for this big twist of what's really going on. So the question was, why is Morgan Edge specifically in Smallville? And to me, I feel like that question has already kind of been answered, like because Smallville has the biggest supply of Kryptonite. But her logic, I guess, was like, why stay in Smallville like after getting this supply of Kryptonite? And because you look at the other towns that he's had his whole coal mines set up in, and it seems to kind of be the pattern of he sets them up there and then he leaves and then sets it up somewhere else. So why is it that it's staying in Smallville? And I mean, again, I kind of just assumed like the explanation would just be that there's like more Kryptonite in Smallville than there is anywhere else. But it does turn out that there's a little bit more to this. I just find it weird that was kind of like they weren't incorrect for assuming there was something else of why he was staying in Smallville. It's just kind of weird that they even had that question to begin with. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. But, for me, that was kind of like one of the weird parts of the episode, to my opinion. But then we cut to Morgan Edge now finally unleashing like kind of the Kryptonian spirits on his test subjects, specifically the ones that Lana Lane had chosen for the leadership program. Although for our first subject in particular, it wasn't someone that Lana actually chose specifically, but it was someone that Morgan Edge had chosen because he noticed that obviously she had a connection with Lana, and so he wanted to use that to his advantage in order to get her like kind of that easy leadership role. Meanwhile, we do cut to the high school where we see Kyle dropping off Sarah to school, and we see him having a very happy attitude. And at first you're kind of like thinking this is because he's really trying to make up for how he like majorly let Sarah down in the previous episode. And you got Sarah, who's just kind of like going with it, but not like in a, oh great, my dad is actually being really nice now, just kind of like, yeah, we'll see how this lasts, expecting it to not last very long. Kind of just reminds me in a small way of the TV show Shameless. Like don't get me wrong, I definitely wouldn't at all compare Kyle to Frank, because Frank is actually just a straight up terrible person, and Kyle clearly has a lot of redeemable qualities despite a few of his faults. But regardless, it's kind of that whole thing where anytime you show like a little bit of improvement of a character and you have the other characters around that character just kind of being like, yeah, we'll see how long this lasts, that's kind of where it reminds me of Frank from Shameless, where there was the one season where you actually do think he's becoming a much better person, and then of course the joke is it just turns out he's been tripping on meth the entire season. So that's kind of what like you have Sarah here really expecting that to kind of be what ends up is going to happen to Kyle in the end. But of course, as we see later, there's actually a little bit more to it. But then we cut to Superman, who goes to Mexico to stop another bank robbery. Again, you kind of like, he uses his super hearing to find out that there's this bank robbery going on in general. And I guess like my only kind of concern with this idea is that if he just has, this kind of super hearing and he can hear disasters around the world, I kind of feel like at least someone on the show needs to ask why he's not there for every natural disaster or every disaster in general, all the time. And before you guys say, oh, maybe he is, we just don't really see it, we kind of know that he's not, because we have like several other shows that take place within this universe and we see that Superman is not there all the time. know, for example, the Flash, which happened like an hour before this episode. We have this, you know, giant blimp about to crash into a stadium, which he could have easily lifted over the stadium. So, you know, you kind of, when you bring in the super hearing and show that he can hear crises going on all around the world, you kind of start to wonder why he's not always going all around the world, kind of a thing. But regardless, it was a really cool scene, and I didn't mean to skip forward, so I apologize. I'm going to go back. What was really cool about the scene is that this is where we get to see the effects of the kryptonite from the previous episode. Specifically, the kryptonite gas has really affected him, and it's causing him to like actually take damage whenever he's getting shot by any of the guns. Like, you know, the shotgun in particular, like straight up knocks him on his ass for like a small amount of time when we cut to break. Of course, when we cut, you know, back from break, he gets right back up again and just, you know, knocks the rest of the guys out. And one really cool attention to detail here that I actually really liked was that Superman speaks Spanish, which makes a lot of sense, because when you're a hero that travels the entire world all the time, helping people all across the world, it makes sense that you'd want to speak multiple languages and not just English. So I thought that was absolutely awesome right there that they did that. We then have like kind of another scene that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I also would say that it kind of makes sense because we have seen Lois kind of lash out like this before. You know, she's usually very good at articulating her frustration and, you know, having good points whenever she is trying to prevent something, you know, some big disaster, or whenever she's about to make a scene, for example. But in this particular case, you know, and Morgan Edge even kind of calls it out for her. She's just completely desperate, so she just straight up kind of walks into the middle of a meeting where she tries to warn a bunch of people that they're going to be, you know, the next test subjects, that they're going to be taken over by Kryptonian spirits. She like she doesn't word it that way, but she does basically imply that they're all going to be in big danger if they don't leave right now. And of course, everyone just looks at her like she's like a crazy conspiracy nut. Like, you know, one person's probably just kind of like thinking, it's weird that she's not wearing a tinfoil hat over her head. So eventually, like, Morgan Edge clears the room and the two of them talk. And I think, and Morgan Edge kind of just brings up this, you know, kind of point that really comes up in politics all the time, which is, you know, the truth is kind of subjective. It doesn't matter what's fact or what's not. It really just matters of who you have on your side, who you have to believe you. And right now, Morgan Edge has like the resources, and he's also offering people, you know, exactly what they want. So of course, people are definitely going to take his side over Lois Lane's side right now. There was kind of a subplot going on in the episode that never really paid off, but I assume we're going to get payoff for it by the end of the season, where Lois was trying to convince Clark to talk to more people about this, trying to convince them not to join Morgan Edge. The assumption being like one of two things, like one of them being the fact that Superman, of course, was born and raised in Smallville, so he knows the people a lot more than Lois Lane does. And then, of course, the other major factor being Superman's mom being basically the kind of best friend to everyone in Smallville, always lending a helping hand to everyone who needed it. So her assumption is that with kind of like that, those two things going on, maybe people will listen to Clark more than they listen to her. But we never really get to see the payoff for that, because unfortunately there's just a lot going on in this episode. So like, it's a mixture of Clark's lack of confidence and just Clark not really having the time to really talk to the people of Smallville. So, you know, and then, you know, Morgan Edge is of course taking advantage of this by being like, yeah, you know, knowing and proving are kind of two different things here, Lois, so you got nothing on me at this point. We then see Lois's reaction when she sees Superman. We see him like covered in bruises all over. He basically looks like me whenever I go paintballing. Like, you know, just that's exactly what kind of these bullet marks look like on him. And of course, you know, Lois is absolutely furious to find out that the kryptonite had this kind of a huge impact on him, to where it's like, you know, the fact that, you know, bullets are actually leaving bruises on him, which is something that never happens before. We then cut to Jordan Kent with Sarah Cushing, and we get another really good scene between the two of them. I absolutely love the chemistry, not just between the two characters, but I feel like the two actors really pull it off, and they constantly feel like they're real friends, like maybe outside of the show. And I could be wrong about that, of course, but I do figure that, you know, if you are going to have great chemistry with someone on screen, you definitely have to have good chemistry with them off screen. So, you know, my assumption is that you got like some actors that just know how to get along with each other. And it's the same thing whenever I see like Jordan and Jonathan Kent sharing screen time together. You get the feeling like the two actors have a lot of good chemistry with each other, and that chemistry really helps play out on the screen, on the when they're on screen together, of course. This here we get like a scene where it seems like Jordan is actually going to try and go for another kiss with Sarah, but this time it might work out more in his favor, unlike episode 1, because he's got two things going for him. He's got the fact that Sarah clearly does have feelings for him, and then of course the other thing just kind of being the fact that now she is actually single. Now of course she isn't really looking for a relationship at this point, she's just looking for a friend. However, that being said, it is clear that there's kind of romantic tension between the two of them. So we have like Jordan seemingly kind of debating with himself in his head whether or not he should try to kiss her again. But then of course that's when the kryptonite kind of kicks in for Jordan, and we see it affects him a lot differently, like giving him a cold, and almost in a literal sense, because the kryptonite causes his lungs to essentially swell up, and as he's taking in oxygen, the oxygen freezes just like Superman's freeze breath. So as he sneezes, he's literally sneezing piles of ice, which means he ends up having to bail on Sarah, and unfortunately he's like unable to like let her know why it is that he's bailing on her at that point. We then at first they're trying to get Sam Lane to help him, because they figured he's the one that is kind of responsible for Jordan getting poisoned in the first place, so obviously he's the one who can help them. But unfortunately this is just way out of his lane, no pun intended. I just realized that's actually a funny joke that I'm going to probably use later on. But anyways, because of this, Superman ends up taking Jordan to the Fortress of Solitude himself, thinking that maybe the answers will be there, and they are, but it's unfortunately the only way to get the kryptonite out of the system is to straight up burn it out of him. And you get like, I didn't get a screen capture of it, and I'm kind of regretting it, but there was like the moment where Clark realizes that's what he has to do to Jordan in order to get the kryptonite out of him. You just see this look in Clark's face of just, I am so sorry, like he just knows this is not going to be a pleasant experience for Jordan, so he stands there with him the entire time and basically kind of gives him his hand and just says, squeeze it as hard as you need to, because this is going to hurt a lot. I'm kind of surprised he doesn't give Jordan like a piece of like metal to bite on, while this all happens, because yeah, it definitely looks painful, and you can only imagine, getting something burned on the inside of your body in order to, to get rid of all the toxins inside. You can only imagine how painful that must have been for him. But then we do come back to Sam Lane and Lois Lane, and of course Lois really expresses a lot of frustration, and this actually kind of harkens back to I don't remember if it was episode 4 or 5, but there was one particular episode where Sam tried telling the kids to leave their dad alone, because he basically saying that the Department of Defense needs Superman more than his kids do, so his kids need to back off, is basically what happened. And that episode ended with Lois straight up telling him that if you keep pushing us like this, you won't ever be welcome back in our house. And of course we kind of see that paying off here, where Lois says that as soon as this is all fixed, I never want to see you again. And it is a really kind of sad moment, because you could tell that Sam in this particular scene really does feel bad for what he's done, because the whole contingency was never actually meant to be used. Like he kind of used it just as a worst case scenario, but of course then you get the wrong people having access to those weapons, using it against Superman, and now it affected his own grandkids. So you can just only imagine like the guilt that he feels because of it. We then cut to the talent show, where of course Jordan isn't able to attend. Now I do believe before I thought this was like a play audition that she was going for. I didn't realize this was actually a talent show. I don't know how I got a talent show mixed up with a play audition, because that's two very different things. I think it's just because I didn't realize that high schools actually still did talent shows. Like maybe it's because this is a high school in a small town, but I know that like my particular high school, we never actually did talent shows or anything like that. Like we had like kind of after school like stage performances that people would go up and perform, but it wasn't really a talent show type of thing. It was more like just kind of I don't know what you would call it. Like, it was just, you'd have certain singers or certain actors just performing something at our school after, school was done, but I'm not sure if there was like a name for it or anything like that. But regardless, she's almost like not gonna go, but then we do really see Kyle, again, like I kind of mentioned before, him really trying to improve as a dad, trying to, give up on the alcohol, and then, seemingly, not wanting to be a firefighter anymore because of like just the mental damage it's been having on him. So he's up there and he's able to kind of give her the confidence she needs to play by, kind of staying in the back, playing guitar for her while she sings. And it's definitely a really sweet moment between the two of them. We then have another moment between Jonathan Kent and Sam Lane, but this one, kind of similar to the way it kind of plays out with Lois and Sam. It's basically Jonathan just expressing a lot of disappointment in Sam, but not necessarily, I think unlike Lois though, like Jonathan kind of sees where Sam's coming from, but Jonathan also corrects Sam when Sam tries to say that, the two of them are like, we're powerless people who know a bunch of people with powers, and Jonathan's like, yeah, but the difference is I would never suspect that, my dad or my brother would ever turn on us, I could never possibly be afraid of them, and, straight up calls General Sam Lane a coward because of his contingency plans. And, again, I still stand by Sam Lane to an extent, in the sense that I don't think it was cowardly for him to have a contingency plan. I think it's just being cautious, and I think the only big issue I had with the whole thing is that he wasn't upfront with the family about it. I think that I don't think it's a bad idea for the Department of Defense to have kryptonite, for worst case scenarios type of things. But, there are like certain precautions he should have been taking that he wasn't. Like, for one, you got to make sure that, the family knows. And then the other thing is too, he's not going to be around forever. In fact, unrelated to that, I actually do think he's probably going to die by the end of the season. I don't know. For some reason, I'm seeing a red flag or a red shirt on Sam Lane, but that's just me. I could be wrong, but it leads to the issue of what happens when Sam Lane dies and then that kryptonite is still there. Like, what happens if the wrong person then becomes like the new leader of the Department of Defense, and he suddenly decides that, Superman simply not following orders is an excuse to use the kryptonite on him. So that's kind of where the big issue kind of comes with that kryptonite, is that, Sam Lane isn't always going to be in charge of the Department of Defense, and what happens to the kryptonite after that. So it is something that I kind of hope gets brought up later on in the series. Like, if he does end up getting killed, like I'm still kind of predicting, I am kind of curious if we could have like a leader of the Department of Defense who's actually kind of more of an antagonist than Sam Lane is. But again, it goes to, I personally don't think it was a bad thing that he had the kryptonite. He just really should have been more honest about it. And I feel like both Lois and Superman would have been a little more understanding, especially, again, like I brought this up also before, Superman isn't the only Kryptonian we've seen in the Arrowverse so far. Like, obviously we don't know how much of, everything that's been established in Supergirl is now going to be retconned because of Crisis on Infinite Earths. But, we do know that Supergirl obviously still exists in this universe, so we know that there is her as a Kryptonian. And then we have also seen Supergirl season 1. Again, maybe some of this has been retconned, but I doubt it. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, season 1 had a bunch of Kryptonians as the main antagonists of the show. Although I'm going to be totally honest, I actually never finished Supergirl season 1 because it was pretty bad, honestly. I wasn't really the biggest fan of season 1 of Supergirl. But that all being said, though, they did establish that Kryptonians do exist within this universe. So it is kind of surprising that he doesn't ever bring that up in conversation, the idea that Superman isn't the only Kryptonian. So what happens if other Kryptonians show up as a threat, as we're seeing currently in this season, with not necessarily people from Krypton, but spirits of people from Krypton taking over humans, that kind of a thing. So we then find out that the bank robbery that Superman stopped did not go unnoticed, because this is how Morgan Edge finds out that Superman is still kind of weak to the kryptonite. So he sends a bunch of his henchmen, or I'm sorry, I should be gender neutral here, hench people, although I think henchmen would be a gender neutral term, I'm not sure, but he sends them basically after Lois Lane to kill her. And of course, since Jonathan Kent unfortunately is also there, he's also going to be in danger. They also take away the device that they constantly use to contact Superman. So basically they're in a lot of danger, but luckily Sam Lane being out there in order to try and help fix Jordan Kent, he's still there with the kryptonite gas, and he's able to use it to help protect them. Now, what was kind of weird to me about this, what happened before this, is we had a scene where he's on the phone with someone, and one of the questions that comes up is, have you tested it yet? And his response is, no, I don't think he's in the mood for that. And my question is, let's say that Superman, or let's say that Jordan Kent wasn't actually sick in this moment. Was Sam Lane there just for an unrelated purpose to be like, hey Superman, I got kryptonite and I need to test it out on you to see if it works? I would love to have seen how that conversation would have played out if that's actually what his original purpose for being there was. It might have just been a throwaway line or something, but I don't know. To me, I can't help but just wonder, what was he talking about testing it? Was he actually going to ask Superman if he could shoot him with kryptonite gas, after Superman literally just recovered from kryptonite gas? That was really funny to me. But here we find out also, as they're kind of running away from the other possessed people who are possessed by Kryptonians, that Jonathan Kent did keep a lot of the weapons that John Henry Irons kept in the RV. Now, it is kind of surprising that he did this because, he had this whole moment between Lois and Jonathan in the previous episode where Lois basically told him he can't do this kind of a thing, and he seemed to have the two of them seemed to have had an understanding, but I guess that wasn't fully accurate because he still kept a lot of the weapons. It's also kind of funny because with John Henry Irons, you'd think that he'd keep inventory on a lot of his weapons that he has, but I guess either he noticed they were missing, or he didn't say anything, or he just didn't care to do a count or anything like that. So anyways, he uses it, and thankfully it does end up saving their lives. Meanwhile, though, we cut back to the Fortress of Solitude, and we get an awesome moment between Superman and Jordan Kent, because we really do see how much Jordan has matured, I think is the best way to put it, over the series, where, you look at the first 3 episodes in a row, and it's literally just like Jordan, blaming his dad for pretty much everything. And, in some cases, there are areas where he is definitely right to blame his dad for, it makes total sense why he would be upset. But, in a lot of areas, but when it happens for 3 episodes in a row, it definitely got tiring. If you look back on my review for episode 3, I definitely wasn't the biggest fan of that episode in particular, mostly just because it felt like they were repeating the same thing over and over and over in that episode. So here it is, a huge relief to see them having this really great understanding between the two of them. Superman being really sorry because Jordan Kent never asked for any of this. He didn't ask for superpowers or to go through the same issues that Superman has to go through every day. But I love Jordan's response, which is same for you. You also never asked for any of this as well. And that's where they kind of have that understanding where they both feel like outcasts, but at least they have each other to to lean on through this whole thing. So then we cut back to the barn, and we see Kyle Cushing has arrived, and it did seem weird at first, but of course this gets answered immediately after that. We see him following one of the Kryptonians before she actually arrives at Lois Lane's house. That was kind of an attention to detail I forgot to bring up. But when he got there as fast as he did, you're kind of wondering how did he get there and why is he there so soon? And the answer gets answered very soon when Jonathan has to use the blaster to save their lives from the other 2 Kryptonians. It's here we see Kyle himself has also become a Kryptonian, and he basically heat visions away the blaster. Superman arrives right as Kyle is about to kill the 2 of them, and this is probably my only real complaint about the episode, is that when Superman arrives, we see him kind of knock Kyle away, and then immediately he's just oh, they all got away. He doesn't really even attempt to look for them, which is weird because you look at previous episodes, that's never happened before. Whenever there's another Kryptonian or just another person with powers, we usually get like a cool chase scene. And I get it, you know, the show does have a very limited budget, even though it's definitely bigger than the other CW shows. It's still limited. The limit is still there, so it kind of feels like what they do with the show is they show one spectacular Superman fight an episode. Usually it's very short and very brief, but it is very cool. And because they already used that up during the scene that took place in Mexico, I feel like that was probably the reason that we don't really get to see, you know, a really big epic battle between Superman and the other three Kryptonians. And it could also be that, you know, the budget is also being saved probably for the series finale, where I feel like they're really going to go all out with a lot of the, you know, major fight scenes and all the CG that they're going to need to do for it. So we have him, you know, temporarily saving his family as the Kryptonians flee. And, you know, we then have Sam Lane and Lois Lane have like a really nice understanding between each other. Like, Sam really does feel like a lot of regret for what happened, and he promises that the Department of Defense's first priority is now going to be Smallville and taking down Morgan Edge for good. It is going to be kind of interesting now that he has the now that they have the Department of Defense like fully on board that Morgan Edge is evil. You know, there's still limits of what they could do. It's not like the Department of Defense can like send out a search warrant for Morgan Edge, because legally they still don't have like any solid evidence that Morgan Edge is behind everything. So I am kind of curious to see like how they go about trying to stop Morgan Edge in the next upcoming episodes. The other thing too is that they said they're going to try to, you know, look for the other people that are possessed, but what's going to happen when they find them? Because it's like all they know is that they blacked out. They don't really know what actually happened to them afterwards, so they don't know they've been taken over by Kryptonians. And you know, we have a moment with Kyle and Lana Lang here, where Kyle kind of just, you know, apologizes for just, you know, disappearing. And of course their immediate assumption is that he's probably gotten drunk again, but in actuality it's just the fact that he completely blanked out, woke up on a field, and, you know, discovered that his ribs were just completely messed up. You know, he didn't know why they were hurting so badly. So clearly, you know, whenever the Kryptonians are fully taken over their conscience, it's definitely, they definitely don't know what's going on. So it's not like kind of one of those things where their conscience like sits in the back of their head and they're witnessing everything happening. It's actually just straight up, they don't know anything that's going on when they're being taken over. So you know, with Kyle now being back to normal, it is going to be kind of interesting to see how he reacts to this upcoming information of Morgan Edge, because now I feel like it's going to be impossible for him to turn a blind eye to everything going on, which you know, the one thing I was kind of hoping for is I kind of was hoping that Kyle would find out how corrupt Morgan Edge is on his own, but it does seem like here the Department of Defense is going to be the one who has to really break the news to him. So you know, it is too bad, because I feel like it would have been a little bit better if he had to find it out for himself. We then finally figure out why Morgan Edge, you know, wants to stay in Smallville, why he hasn't moved since, you know, taking over the mines in Smallville. And what it all comes down to is that the people that don't reject the Kryptonite are the people who are born and raised in Smallville, and it's because of the Kryptonite essentially landing there along with Superman. And the Kryptonite is kind of what infects all the people in Smallville, or, you know, people in Smallville had to be exposed to it for a very specific amount of time. And so if you are from Smallville and then you're given like the essence of another Kryptonian, it's more likely to stick with you, unlike if they try to give it to someone who's not from Smallville. And that's when the Kryptonite kind of gets the Kryptonian kind of gets rejected from the individuals, if that makes sense. So it was kind of an interesting explanation. Again, I don't think I feel like the way they kind of built up this twist was kind of I don't think it was necessary, because I feel like we already had enough reasons to assume that Morgan Edge had other reasons for being in Smallville. I don't think we needed to find this extra layer out, or at least I don't think our main character should have had any reason to really look into this extra layer, but it was there, and I didn't think it was like bad, because it luckily didn't take up that much of the episode either. But it did lead to this twist that makes a lot of sense. But we do have one more twist, which I don't think anyone really saw coming, and that is that Morgan Edge is also a Kryptonian. And you know, the very ending line was really surprising, because he refers to Superman as his brother. Now, it's hard to say for sure whether or not this is a literal thing, or maybe it's just because he's a Kryptonian and he's referring to Superman as his fellow Kryptonian brother in that kind of a sense. But it is very possible that he actually straight up, he means it in a more literal sense, like he's actually calling Superman his actual brother. And I would be really, so I'm going to be really curious to see how that plays out in the next episode. I do love the costume design that they give for him. Very much reminds me of General Zod in a lot of ways, and it kind of reminds me also of the villains going back to Supergirl season 1, a lot of their outfit designs that we had. So it is, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this next confrontation play out in the next episode. But guys, you know what, overall this was another really good episode. Now it didn't quite have the same impact on me as the previous episode did, but that was also because like this episode was a lot more focused on the actual Superman side of things and a lot less on the family side of things. And I think like the show does a really good job of really balancing the two. You either have episodes that have like split down the middle Superman, split down the middle Clark, but in the case of the previous episode and this episode, it felt like the previous episode was a lot more Clark based, and then this episode was a lot more Superman based. And I think the show does a great job at either. So anytime we're getting one or the other or both, I'm always all for it, and I think it's always very well done. But guys, you know what, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We of course here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but guys, of course, above all, keep it A+.